Before we begin, if this conversation helps you think clearly about money, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with someone you care about. Not to hype anything, but because clarity spreads quietly and someone around you might need this perspective more than they admit. Think of sharing this video as a small act of kindness, a way to help someone breathe easier financially. Now let me tell you about Max, because this story starts with him, and for a while Max was me. Max is standing in his kitchen at 6:45 in the morning, while coffee brews and the house stays silent. His kids are still asleep, the day has not started, and he is scrolling through his bank app again. Max makes good money now, far more than he earned at 28, even more than his father earned at this age. Inflation adjusted or not, the numbers look impressive, yet every month he still does math in his head. He wonders where it all goes and why progress never feels as real as it should. On paper, Max has everything he was told to want: the house, the car, and the respectable job title. But there's a quiet voice in his head saying something does not add up, even though nothing looks obviously wrong. Max is not gambling, overspending recklessly, or making stupid decisions that financial advice videos usually warn about. He is being responsible, careful, and doing exactly what men his age are expected to do. And that is the uncomfortable truth, because these traps do not look like mistakes. They look like success. They look like upgrades, stability, and finally making it after years of hard work and pressure. Nobody warns you about these traps, not because they are hidden, but because they are awkward to question. Questioning them feels ungrateful, immature, or irresponsible, especially when other people seem to admire your life. Today, we are going to talk about what these traps really are and why they hit hardest between 35 and 45. More importantly, we will talk about how to step out of them without destroying your life or rejecting success. This is the conversation I wish someone had with Max years earlier, before responsibility quietly turned into a cage. Here is what most people imagine financial trouble looks like in your late 30s or early 40s. They picture someone reckless, leasing cars they cannot afford, or stacking credit card debt from impulsive vacations. That person exists, but he is not most men struggling quietly during this stage of life. Most men here are doing what society calls the right things, not obviously stupid or irresponsible choices. They buy homes in good school districts because stability feels like responsible parenting and adulthood. They finance reliable vehicles because families need safety, convenience, and dependable transportation every single day. They take on more responsibility at work, trading time and stress for higher income and perceived security. They pay for daycare, sports, lessons, and experiences that good fathers believe they should provide. None of these decisions sound reckless or foolish. They sound exactly like growing up properly. And that is where things become dangerous, because mistakes that look like maturity rarely get questioned. When discomfort feels normal, you assume it is simply the cost of being an adult. Instead of questioning the structure, you double down and push harder, believing effort will eventually fix everything. But there is a difference between responsibility and rigidity, between building a life and building a cage. During this decade, many men unknowingly build cages without realizing it until movement becomes impossible. Let me explain the first major trap, because it usually begins with something that feels completely harmless. The first trap is upgrading your lifestyle before you have built real, durable financial stability. This is not about yachts or mansions, but about normal upgrades made slightly too early. You get a raise, cross into six figures, and suddenly it feels like you have arrived. So you upgrade the car, the home, the dinners, and the yeses you once avoided. This slow expansion is called lifestyle creep, and its danger is rarely explained clearly enough. Lifestyle creep is not just spending more money, it is locking higher fixed costs into your life permanently. When you buy a more expensive home, the higher cost does not happen once, it follows you every month. Property taxes rise, insurance increases, utilities cost more, and maintenance becomes another constant obligation. Your financial break-even point quietly moves upward, requiring more income just to stand still. According to recent data, the average American mortgage payment now exceeds $2,000 per month. For many households, housing alone consumes 30 to 40% of their take-home income. Add a typical new car payment, averaging over $700, and flexibility disappears quickly. Before saving anything, a massive portion of each paycheck is already committed and untouchable. This is where the trap closes, because your income must now remain high no matter what. You cannot easily take risks, change careers, or slow down without threatening your entire structure. Even opportunities that look better long-term feel impossible when short-term obligations dominate every decision. The lifestyle you bought now requires constant motion, like running on a treadmill that never stops. The second trap grows from this pressure and often feels like a reasonable solution. It is financing comfort instead of intentionally buying long-term financial flexibility. Financing makes expensive choices feel manageable by shrinking pain into monthly payments. But when you finance a $40,000 car over 6 years, you are selling future freedom. You are not buying transportation. You are committing to a 6-year obligation that cannot pause. Flexibility is the most underrated financial asset because it protects you when life becomes unpredictable. With flexibility, you can refuse bad jobs, wait for opportunities, and handle emergencies calmly. Without it, every surprise expense feels like a crisis instead of a temporary inconvenience. The cruel part is that the comfort you financed stops feeling special surprisingly fast. The nice car becomes just your car, but the monthly payment never becomes just another thought. Those payments keep arriving regardless of how you feel, how work goes, or what life throws at you. The third trap is saying yes to obligations that permanently raise your financial break-even point. This trap often feels generous, responsible, and morally correct, which makes it especially dangerous. You co-sign a loan for family, believing support now will not affect you long-term. You absorb your partner's debt because you are a team and want to move forward together. You commit to private school tuition because you want your children to have every advantage possible. You buy a larger home anticipating aging parents who may need care and space someday. None of these choices are wrong, but each one increases the income you must earn forever. Once your break-even number rises, it rarely comes back down without painful changes. You can cancel subscriptions and skip luxuries, but mortgages and tuition resist reversal. These are structural decisions, and many men make them without calculating 10-year consequences. The fourth trap is mistaking income growth for actual financial progress and security. You compare your current salary to the past and assume success without checking what remains. Income is money that arrives. Wealth is money that stays and compounds quietly. If expenses rise alongside income, progress stalls even while numbers look impressive. Many high earners feel constant stress because lifestyle expands to match every raise. Studies consistently show six-figure earners report similar stress levels as much lower earners. The problem is not income itself, but the absence of margin, flexibility, and breathing room. Now let me explain why these traps are especially dangerous during the decade between 35 and 45. First, your income is likely higher than ever, which quietly hides inefficiencies and small financial leaks. When enough money flows in, you stop tracking details because problems feel temporarily covered. Those hidden leaks are real, and over decades they compound into hundreds of thousands lost. Second, time pressure peaks during this decade, leaving little space for reflection or strategic thinking. Career demands increase while children, relationships, and aging parents all compete for attention. When life feels nonstop, you default to momentum instead of questioning whether the direction still makes sense. You keep saying yes because stopping feels riskier than continuing something that already feels heavy. Third, responsibility begins to feel identical to maturity, which creates a dangerous psychological blind spot. You tell yourself real adults accept pressure, sacrifice flexibility, and carry obligations without complaint. Questioning those choices feels selfish or immature, especially when others praise your stability. But responsibility means meeting obligations, while being trapped means losing all meaningful alternatives. During this decade, many men crossed that line without noticing when it actually happened. Let us talk about what these traps truly cost you over the long term. The first cost is delayed compounding, which silently steals your most powerful wealth-building years. Every dollar spent on lifestyle today is a dollar not working for you in the market. At 37, time is still your ally, but only if you actually deploy it. Waiting until 45 to invest seriously sacrifices the decade where compounding works hardest. This loss never appears on a bill, yet it permanently reshapes your financial future. You rarely feel delayed compounding in the moment, but its absence becomes obvious later. For example, investing $500 monthly starting at 35 can quietly grow into nearly $500,000 by 65. Delay that same investment until 45 and the final result drops to less than half. Same contribution, same market returns, but time lost creates an irreversible gap. That gap represents options you no longer have, choices that disappear without warning. The second long-term cost is chronic financial stress that lingers even when income looks strong. When your break-even point is high, every paycheck already feels spent before it arrives. You live one unexpected expense away from disruption, regardless of how impressive your salary appears. This constant pressure affects sleep, health, patience, relationships, and clarity at work. Research consistently links financial stress to anxiety and health problems among middle-aged adults. The cruel irony is that this stress often comes from high income without margin, not actual scarcity. The third cost is emotional and harder to admit, even to yourself. You look successful externally, yet internally you feel increasingly stuck and constrained. On paper, everything works, but in real life, you cannot make meaningful moves. You cannot take risks, slow down, or change direction without threatening the entire structure. Complaining feels wrong because others have less, so the frustration stays silent. Over time, the gap between how your life looks and how it feels grows wider. That internal mismatch drains energy, motivation, and long-term satisfaction. So, how do you step out of these traps without destroying everything you built? The answer is not extreme minimalism or rejecting success entirely. The real goal is reclaiming options, flexibility, and control intentionally over time. So, to be realistic, nobody here needs to sell everything, quit jobs, or pretend living extremely small is virtuous. The goal is not rejecting success, but redesigning it so success creates freedom instead of pressure. The first practical step is auditing obligations, not just tracking everyday discretionary spending. List every payment you must make monthly, regardless of income changes, emotions, or unexpected disruptions. Add them together and you will see your true financial baseline, not the story you tell yourself. That number represents what it costs to keep your life running without growth or progress. Most people have never actually calculated this number, even though it controls every decision they make. If that baseline feels uncomfortably high, it explains why everything feels tense despite good income. Reducing this number creates more relief than cutting coffee or canceling minor subscriptions ever could. This may require difficult conversations, uncomfortable trade-offs, or temporary lifestyle adjustments. But structural changes create lasting impact, while small cuts mostly create frustration. The second step is separating your identity from your lifestyle choices. Many men unknowingly tie self-worth to cars, homes, neighborhoods, and visible markers of success. When lifestyle becomes identity, any downgrade feels like personal failure instead of strategic adjustment. But your value is not measured by what you own, but by who you remain without it. The man who feels secure driving modestly is freer than someone trapped maintaining appearances. Once self-worth disconnects from spending, decisions become clearer and far less emotional. You stop asking what looks successful and start asking what actually supports your future. That psychological shift alone often reduces stress before any numbers even change. The third step is reclaiming optionality, one deliberate financial decision at a time. Optionality means every decision either expands your future choices or quietly removes them. Buying a larger home usually removes options, while lowering fixed costs often creates unexpected freedom. Paying off debt expands flexibility, while adding new payments narrows your future paths. Keeping a reliable paid-off car often adds more peace than upgrading to something impressive. Each choice may feel small, but over time they compound financially and psychologically together. As optionality grows, daily anxiety slowly fades, and long-term thinking becomes easier. You begin seeing opportunities instead of obligations dominating every financial decision. Now, let us address the most common pushback many men feel hearing this conversation. They say providing means giving families the best possible lifestyle money can buy. But real provision is not maximizing spending. It is maximizing stability and future choice. Children remember presence, emotional safety, and calm far more than material upgrades. They remember whether their home felt tense or peaceful, rushed or supportive. A newer car matters less than a parent who can take time off without panic. A bigger house matters less than parents who are not constantly stressed about money. Providing well means building a foundation that absorbs shocks instead of amplifying them. Saying no to upgrades today often allows more meaningful yeses tomorrow. When break-even drops, confidence rises because survival no longer dominates every calculation. You negotiate harder, walk away sooner, and wait patiently for better opportunities. That calm confidence often attracts better outcomes without additional effort. Financial freedom grows quietly once desperation is removed from decision-making entirely. This shift creates a positive cycle where clearer thinking leads to better decisions and stronger long-term results. Reduced stress improves focus, energy, and judgment, which quietly increases performance at work and home. Better performance often leads to better opportunities, higher income, and even more flexibility over time. But this cycle only starts once you lower pressure instead of constantly increasing obligations. Let us pause for a quick reality check using simple numbers anyone can understand. If you are 40 years old, saving $500 monthly, you could reach roughly $250,000 by 60. Spend that same money on lifestyle upgrades and it disappears permanently without creating future security. Over 20 years, that choice represents not just contributions lost, but massive compounding you never capture. That difference often separates comfortable aging from working longer because you have no alternative. This outcome rarely comes from lack of income, but from unexamined financial structure. Another common mistake appears when men hit early savings milestones and misunderstand what they represent. Reaching 50,000 or 100,000 feels like permission to finally relax and upgrade. But milestones are foundations, not rewards meant to be consumed or celebrated through spending. You would never celebrate a house foundation by burning it down after years of careful work. Yet many people unknowingly do this financially by upgrading immediately after progress appears. Every time a milestone triggers spending, momentum resets and progress quietly stalls again. People who build real wealth treat milestones as starting lines, not finish lines. They accelerate building because they finally have something solid to build upon confidently. This mindset shift separates those who stay comfortable from those who gain lasting freedom. Wealth grows faster when progress compounds instead of being periodically erased by lifestyle expansion. This conversation matters beyond money because money ultimately controls time, options, and emotional safety. When finances feel unstable, even with high income, you are not free, you are owned by obligations. But when structure is intentional and flexible, money becomes a tool instead of a source of fear. Something subtle changes when you realize you can survive setbacks without everything falling apart. You show up calmer, more patient, and more confident because fear no longer drives every decision. That confidence spills into relationships, parenting, leadership, and how you carry yourself daily. Not because you are richer, but because you're no longer desperate or constantly on edge. Control over finances quietly creates control over your emotional and mental state. The biggest takeaway here is simple but uncomfortable. These traps are failures of visibility, not discipline. You cannot avoid a trap you cannot see, especially when it looks like success. Society celebrates bigger homes, nicer cars, and heavier responsibilities as proof you are winning. But once you understand real wealth is flexibility, those signals lose their power over you. You begin making choices based on long-term peace instead of short-term approval. That shift does not feel like deprivation, it feels like relief and quiet confidence. If you are between 35 and 45 feeling stuck, know that your window has not closed. You still have decades of earning, investing, and compounding ahead if you change direction intentionally. Every year you delay, obligations entrench deeper, and the cage feels increasingly permanent. That is why starting now matters more than waiting for a perfect, calm moment. This week, audit your obligations and identify one structural change that reduces pressure meaningfully. You do not need to overhaul everything, you only need to start moving deliberately. Once you start moving in the right direction, progress accelerates faster than you expect, both financially and emotionally. If this video helped you see something clearly, share it with someone you know is quietly struggling. Not to lecture them, but to let them know they are not broken, lazy, or failing. Sometimes one honest perspective can reduce fear enough to help someone keep going another year. If you are willing, comment one financial choice you will make differently and help normalize this conversation.